Good morning. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this morning's zoning hearing. The case name is Cypress Manor RPD, DCI number 2024-00027. The date is December 19th, 2024. All testimony and evidence that I take in under these hearings must be accepted under oath, which I will administer to the room in mass at the end of my comments. If you're a member of the public, you will have an opportunity to speak after the presentations of staff and the applicant. The order of proceedings will be as follows. The applicant is the one who is making the request. They will present their request first. Their testimony may include more than one witness. Sometimes there'll be expert witnesses to speak to specific issues such as transportation or the environment. Following their presentation, the county planner that reviewed the request and prepared the staff report will also make a presentation. The staff report in this case recommends approval of the request with conditions. Following staff's presentation, I will open up the floor to members of the public who wish to participate. If you wish to participate, please come to the podium, state your name, indicate where you live in relationship to the project if you wish, and then share any concerns you may have regarding the request. I find oftentimes that members of the public are not entirely against or in favor of a project. They have specific concerns. If you share them with us, we have an opportunity to clarify that subject with you, or in some instances, fashion a condition to address those concerns. I am not the final decision maker in this case. I prepare a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, who will make the ultimate decision in a hearing that will probably occur in either late January or early February of next year. Okay, I'm ready to administer the oath. If you will be speaking on the record, I ask that you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you place into the record will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'm ready to begin.
Good morning, Ms. Collins. For the record, Francesca Pasadomo on behalf of the applicant, Coleman, Yovanovich, and Kester. Here with me today is Andrew Fitzgerald with Respect as our civil, Barrett Strzelecki of Bear Paws Environmental Consulting, Yuri Bakuri, TR Transportation, and of course Dan DeLisi of DeLisi Fitzgerald. The applicant representative, Mike Liggins, sits here beside me on the left. I'll be handing it over, obviously, to Dan to walk through the project.
Madam Hearing Examiner, if I could just interrupt quickly, I did want to get on the record that this meeting has been advertised, and I do have the public affidavit.
Okay, just give me a second here. Okay, there's more than one case here. Okay, let's see. Okay, I will mark this as Staff Exhibit 1. This is the affidavit of publication. This is Staff Exhibit 2. The staff report is Exhibit 1. All right, you may proceed.
For the record, my name is Dan DeLisi. I'm a land use planner with DeLisi Inc. Here on behalf of the applicant. I've been in front of this forum many times over the past quarter century as testifying as an expert witness.
But who's counting?
Yeah, exactly. So I have a PowerPoint presentation which I will hand to you.
Okay, applicant Exhibit 1 is the PowerPoint.
So I'm going to go through the bulk of the presentation, introduce the project, give an overview, talk about compatibility, the standards of review, lead plan compliance. Yuri will come up and talk about the transportation criteria, Barrett then environmental. Drew will talk about the deviations, and then we'll end with the 48-hour memo. So the property is 28 acres. You can see it on the aerial here, north side of State Road 82. It's approximately 2/3 mile from Grant Boulevard, which is right here, and 1/3 mile west of Parkdale, which is right here. Just because it's a large planned development in the area, which you probably recall, this is the Savannah Lakes mixed-use plan development just to the north of it. A lot of platted single-family. The plat isn't necessarily representative of the master concept plan, but this is under construction as we speak. Different parts of the plan development are under construction. Part of it are already constructed in this northern area. We're in the urban community future land use category. We're completely surrounded by urban community. That's generally the predominant land use category in the area. I say we're completely surrounded. Obviously, there are wetland areas to our north. The wetland land use category, as you know, is a category that's conceptual in terms of its line work. You have to comply with the wetlands policies regardless of what the map shows. In our case, the wetlands come into the property a lot more than this little sliver to the north, and we'll talk more about that in this presentation. But urban community allows for 6 units an acre, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. So we're asking for 168 multifamily units over 28 acres. That's just shy of 6 units an acre. The intent is for multifamily or townhouse development. We've located one large contiguous preserve in the northern section of the property. So we consolidate all the preserve in one area. Feel that's better for compatibility, better for the environment to have one larger area. We have 3 different lakes here. We're trying to orient the development towards State Road 82 as much as possible. And we have one main access point, which is aligned with a median cut over here, and then an emergency access on the west side.
So is that access going to be gated, or?
So Drew can speak in a little bit more detail, but typically they're gated with the fire service having like a transponder.
And is that because of the access management plan? You can't have a full access there?
Well, I'll let Yuri go through this,
Okay.
but yeah.
I'm just wondering, why does it have to be just emergency only? Is there a reason based on the road? That's all right. We'll wait for Yuri. That's fine.
Or Drew. Yeah, okay. So the criteria for approval is listed here in LDC section 34-145. I'll go through most of these, and others will go through pieces of it. Compliance with or consistency with the comprehensive plan. As I said before, we're in the urban community future land use category, which is defined by policy 1.1.4. These are areas characterized by a mixture of relatively intense commercial and residential uses, language from 1.1.4. This is really the predominant land use category in Lehigh Acres. There are other central urban, which is a little more intense, but you see urban community throughout Lehigh Acres. As I said before, there's a standard density range of 1 to 6 units an acre, but you could go up to 10 units an acre with bonus density, or 15 with the transfer of density units from Pine Island. In this case, we're proposing something right at 6 units an acre. The wetlands on site, there are wetlands, so part of the wetland land use category in this northern area. We are preserving all of the wetlands on site, and so in accordance with the LEA plan, we're able to transfer that density off of the wetlands at the rate of the adjacent land use category, which is urban community. So
And what's the proposed height,
the proposed height,
building height?
45 feet. I need to look at the property development regulations. Sorry, let me just pull this up.
I know that you replaced the property development regulations from what was initially included in the staff report. I just want to confirm that the height limitation remains at 45 feet for the multifamily and 30 for the clubhouse.
I believe that's the case. I do not like misspeaking, which happens occasionally, so let me just try and. Oh. Yeah, 45 feet for the multifamily. 45 feet for multifamily, 35 feet for townhouse, and 30 feet for the clubhouse. Objectives 2.1 and 2.2 deal with development, location, and timing. We are in an urban area surrounded by urban uses. This isn't leapfrog development. It's well-timed. There's development occurring all around us. Standards 4.1.1 and 4.1.2 require central water and sewer for this type of development. We do have a letter of service availability from FGUA. Goal 5 talks about location for residential uses. Goal 5 itself, encourages a variety of price ranges and housing types. Lehigh Acres, as you know, is the vast majority of which is platted single-family lots. This is a different type of housing unit in the community, so it's adding more of a variety of housing to the area, which we think is a benefit to the area. Policy 5.1.2 directs residential development away from areas with hazards. This isn't an area where hazards exist, not the coastal high hazard area, not prone to flooding. And then 5.1.3 is location criteria for higher density residential. Although I would not argue this is really higher density residential, I do want to note that, Blackstone Corporate Park is right here. That was just entitled for, or re-entitled for, both industrial and commercial. So this is going to be a pretty large commercial center right here. We do have several schools. There's a high school located right here. It's approximately 2 miles from the site, an elementary school and a middle. I will also note that right on this west side of Savannah Lakes, within a mile of the subject property, the school board owns property and is within active design on both an elementary and a middle school. So we do have quite a lot in very close proximity.
Where's that happening?
Right here on the west side of Savannah Lakes. Actually, their property extends right around here. It's actually within the Savannah Lakes MPD, which I'm in the process of amending. Policy 25.10.1 deals with preservation of indigenous vegetation within the Lehigh Acres community. This is part of the Lehigh Acres community plan. This policy encourages properties to preserve on their sites rather than mitigate off-site. We are doing that. We're not asking to preserve off-site. We're not asking for any reduction in the amount of preservation. The deviation on indigenous that Drew and Barrett will talk about is really to clean up the exotics in the wetlands to have them classify as indigenous so that we can have one larger contiguous preserve area. And that's 9.25 acres of preserve. The next criteria deals with compatibility of surrounding uses. As I said before, this is Savannah Lakes residential plan development, single family to the north. On our master concept plan, as you just saw, we have a nice buffer to them, which is a preserve. There's also a canal separating that MPD with the subject property. That preserve area extends down south, probably about 3 lots, and so it also includes a nice buffer for these northern 3 lots on the west side. The properties here are vacant, AG2. Don't know what they would transition to over time, commercial, maybe residential, but right now they're vacant, AG2. And to the south is State Road 82, which is a major interstate arterial road through Lee County and elsewhere. And then to the south of that, we have an RV park. We have also, as I said before, we're trying to orient the community to State Road 82, and then put, to the extent possible, things that are on our exterior to help with compatibility. So we do have a lake here, which is adds a nice setback of units and something nicer behind people's lots, and then a slightly increased setback along the western side as well. And then we do include code required buffers as well. The criteria with urban services, as I said before, we do have a letter of service availability from FGUA. Yuri will talk about transportation in a moment. And with that, I will hand things over to Barrett to talk about environment.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, Barrett.
Good morning, madam. How are you?
Fine.
Barrett Stayskill, Bear Paws Environmental. I've previously been tendered as an expert witness in wetland wildlife ecology.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So the project is proposing all of the wetlands up to the north. There will be no impacts to any of the wetlands. The preserve totals 9.25 acres and encompasses all of this, a majority of that, all of the wetland area. There were no exotics, or there were no species noted during the initial species survey. An updated species survey will be conducted. Deviation 5 is necessary as it involves removing exotics and replanting of the wetlands due to the amount of exotics in there. The piece was very disturbed with high levels of exotics throughout, and that is the reason for deviation 5. Will allow us to have one whole large contiguous preserve area versus chopping something up around the property. And that's all I've got for you. Do you have any questions?
Are there heritage trees on the site?
There's potentially some, yes ma'am, I believe there are.
Within that preserve?
There are some within the preserve and some without. A survey will be done for those prior to development per conditions set forth in the LEED plan. Any trees, any heritage trees that are identified on site will be replaced with a like tree of similar size and stature and be planted within the preserve or within the open spaces on site.
And this will be addressed during the development order stage in accordance with the LDC?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, Yuri.
For the record, Yuri Baika with TR Transportation Consultants. I've been sworn in and previously accepted as an expert in transportation planning and would like to be accepted as one today as well.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So we prepared a traffic study for this application. Our traffic study was completed consistent with the Lee County traffic guidelines for rezoning projects. As part of our traffic study, we first prepared trip generation analysis. It was prepared consistent with the latest and greatest IT chip generation manual to date. So table here too shows you the chip generation potential of this project. And one thing of note from this table is, as you can see, the total AM peak hour and total PM peak hour doesn't exceed 100 trips. So as part of our traffic study, we weren't really required to prepare a very extensive study at this time. So the only thing we prepared at this time was basically our typical link level service analysis on the surrounding roadways, which included SR 82 west and east of our site. And that roadway was shown to operate at acceptable level of service in the future build-out traffic conditions, both with and without the project traffic. And to answer your other question that you had previously regarding SR 82, yes, it has a corridor access management plan. So that western access that we're showing as an emergency is not on the corridor plan. So
they're allowing it to be an access if it's only limited to emergencies?
I believe so. So yeah, it's not on the access management plan, and we can't ask for access. I mean, we can ask for it, but it's a very hard process to go through. So the only access to this property is via the full median opening. That's
All right, so if there was some accident in front of the main entrance, there's a way to open that gate so that residents can get in and out until
right. I
that
assume
would be
so.
cleared. And of course, emergency vehicles can enter at will,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And so again, we'll do a more detailed traffic analysis when we go through development order stage should this rezoning be approved. And that traffic study will be reviewed not only by Lee County, but also FDOT. And FDOT these days requires a really, really extensive traffic study. So it'll be looked at in very, very detailed view. So that concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Drew Fitzgerald with Respect Company. I'm a professional engineer and have been accepted as an expert in civil engineering in this forum before when asked to be done, so today as well. Please.
Okay, thank you, please proceed.
Okay, so Dan mentioned in his presentation that there's a total of 6 deviations that are being requested on this project. Barrett talked about the one, which is deviation 5. For the preserve, so that was deviation 5, and that's heavily infested exotics. So we're doing a planting plan to replace those after the exotics have been cleared, and then that will count towards our indigenous. Deviation 1 has to do with these little stub out roads in 3 locations, and those are we're asking for a deviation for those roads at a maximum of 150 feet. To not have to provide for a cul-de-sac for a turnaround. We did coordinate with the local fire department, and they gave us a letter of no objection for this deviation. Deviation 2 and 3 really have to do with the setback of the lakes from the project boundary line. So deviation 2 has to do with the right-of-way line. There's a 50-foot right-of-way or 50-foot separation required from the property line. We've asked for 25 feet, and what's required along this property with the buffer is going to be a double hedgerow of a continuous double hedgerow of shrubs all the way across the front of it. So that, in addition to having a raised berm, will provide protections for any wayward vehicles
All
or
right, so
anybody.
you're exceeding the type D buffer that would normally be required along the right-of-way because the excavation lakes are going to be closer than what's permitted by code.
I mean, we're required to provide that buffer, but that buffer will provide protections against any kind of pedestrians or wayward vehicles to get into the lakes.
Okay.
And then deviation 3 is just in a different location, but it's here along the eastern boundary. And again, there's a 50-foot separation required at that location. We're proposing 25 feet, and we also have a type B buffer, or no, I'm sorry, yeah, type B buffer along that property line, which is essentially the same as a type D buffer in terms of the plantings. So it's a double hedgerow, continuous 5
Is there gonna be
trees.
a berm? Is there what?
There will be a perimeter berm
'Cause there
about
could be homes there, right
in the
there.
future. Yeah, we're aware of that. But once, I mean, we're going to have a continuous hedgerow. The berm is going to be about 2 feet above natural ground. It's typical for a development
No
like
fencing
this.
proposed, correct?
No, we have not proposed any fencing. Deviation 4 has to do with the emergency access. Our experience with FDOT, especially on this corridor, is that we're only going to be allowed to do one full access, right in, right out, full access, and that will be considered reasonable access. So we have to have 2 points of access for emergency vehicles, and that's why we are requesting a deviation for allowance of that emergency vehicle access. It will be gated. There's an there's a condition there's 2 conditions for this deviation. We have no objection to those deviations, or to those conditions for the deviation.
No fence, no berm is gonna be along that edge of the lake next to the residence?
There will be a berm.
How high is the berm gonna be?
It's typically about 2 feet.
Okay.
And then deviation 6 is just to allow for on-site or on-street parking. For townhomes, this development would park itself with each unit, but we have found that there are needs of additional parking in these types of development. And so this deviation will allow for them to have parking spaces that come directly off the internal road network. Instead of backing into a parking aisle, they're backing into the roadway.
So how is that gonna work? You're gonna have parking lots, right?
Well, not in this case. This site plan is a townhome type of layout. So you're going to have garages with driveways. Those are 2 spaces per unit, so that meets the code.
That would only apply in the townhouse scenario, not in the multifamily scenario.
Multifamily scenario, there would have to be some parking lots.
And no off-street parking or on-street parking.
No, it would be designed differently.
Okay.
Now, this product has been, instead of platted, they have done them as multifamily developments. So you still have the garage, you still have the driveway. They're typically rental type developments. So you could develop this under the multifamily regulations. And as long as there's the driveways and the garages, you're going to still have parking.
Okay, but if you're gonna do multifamily buildings that are 45 feet high, there's gonna be no on-street parking, correct?
No, I mean, you could have on-street parking under certain scenarios, which was the one I
Under
was trying
what
to describe.
scenario?
So typically, your townhomes are platted and they're fee simple, each unit.
I understand the
Plat.
townhome scenario. I'm not understanding the multifamily building scenario where you should be providing parking lots with sufficient parking to accommodate
Well, but
residents.
you can build multifamily buildings that look like townhomes that have garages and driveways, and those driveways and garages would meet the requirements of the parking and still have additional parking needs off the roadways. You could do that. That is a
Are there
possibility.
projects in Lee County where that's been done before? Because I'm not familiar with that.
There's one for the city of Fort Myers. It's a townhome looking project. It's 100% rental units, and they have garages, they have driveways, and they have on-street parking. It's on Tree Line and just south of the fire station. And we did the civil engineering on that. Lennar originally was going to do it as a subdivision, a platted subdivision, but they found someone who wanted to buy it as a multifamily type development.
And is there an end user for this property?
Not at this time.
You have something else to say?
No, I was waiting to see if you had a question, but
I do have a
that
question
concludes.
regarding the site plan. I recognize that this is a bubble plan.
Right.
And that more detail will be provided at the development order stage.
Right.
But when I reviewed the analysis provided by the school board, it seems as though there's going to be over 60 school-age children generated by this project. And I'm curious to know what accommodation is going to be made for them to get to the school bus, whether it's biking, walking, pushing strollers, waiting for the school bus, outside of right-of-way, for them to wait safely to board a bus.
Right.
And, because you're on State Route 82, so if the plan for the development is for all the kids to stand out on the highway, that's not going to be acceptable, given the number of units that you're proposing here and the students that are expected to be generated.
That's something that would be decided during the development order stage. I mean, there's some detail and that goes into that.
Okay, I just want you to understand that there's several Lee Plan policies that require provisions for this.
Okay.
And I will be conditioning approval on the provision for an off-road waiting area for school buses to comply
Internal.
with the Lee Plan.
Okay.
I'm ready for the next witness.
Thank you. Does that conclude our presentation?
If we provide it in the right of way, can it stop here? It has to come into the subdivision, is that what I'm hearing?
You can figure out how to do it either within or external, if you can pull it off.
We'll negotiate.
Someone's going to speak on the 48-hour memo next.
Oh, yeah. Our apologies. So, we do have a proposed revised condition for, what was it, condition 5?
Revised condition 5?
Yeah, this was heritage trees.
Yes.
Um,
Has staff seen this yet, Dan?
I don't believe staff has seen this yet.
All right.
No, but the language is the
Yeah.
same.
The language, we've crafted this to mirror the land development code. So the language is essentially identical to the land development code.
Okay, so why do we need this condition at all if it's already covered by the LDC?
So our opinion is we don't need the condition at all. If staff wants to provide a condition to alert their staff at the time of development order that there is a land development code provision that requires the heritage tree, preservation, efforts, then we're fine with, the land development code. But, there's never been anything in the record or in any of the reviews that, about this issue at all, and,
So was the concern that the proposed condition went beyond what the LDC required?
Well, it was different. So one, the condition didn't define what a heritage tree was. It's defined in the code, but, it's a different condition. The second thing was that the condition didn't give all the provisions. So there's like a 5-to-1 credit if you preserve a heritage tree in its location. If you do a replanting, there's a specification. None of that was in the condition. And so the land development code is just, it has more in
Okay.
it, more guidance. We're perfectly fine complying with that. That was the only thing.
The second was more clarified.
Yeah, and then the property development regulations was the second thing we had in there.
And that was part of the 48-hour memo, so we'll make sure we copy that and put it into the conditions, replace what was provided to us with that submittal.
The last thing I'll note is just with the discussion about the school, we have no problem with providing shelter. Agree, it's a safety thing. It's totally, that makes a lot of sense. I will note that the memo from the school board that they submitted with staff's 48-hour memo, they're using student generation rates that I don't know where they got them. They're 3 times higher than what the school impact fee study shows. So.
But you don't dispute that there potentially would be school-age children?
Not at all.
Okay,
Not at all.
that's the issue.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just wanted to make the record clear that we do not accept their analysis, but the end condition and the end result is still the same. There are school-age children, they will be
So
accommodated.
if, under the scenario where you're proposing on-street parking, is the project going to have internal sidewalks? Because if you're going to have on-street parking and no sidewalks, how is that going to work with kids walking to school and cars coming in, pulling into on-street parking?
Yeah, sidewalks are required within the development along the roadways.
Whether it's multi or the townhouse?
If it's a platted right-of-way, then it has to have a sidewalk in it. If it's not platted, then the sidewalks would not be required
Would
with it.
potentially be developed without being platted?
Yes.
Are you unable to meet your parking requirement without the on-street parking?
We meet the code, but we feel like for this type of development that's not enough for guests, and just generally, one person or more people than just a couple people that sometimes live in these townhomes.
But you could potentially develop the project without platting a road, have on-street parking, and no sidewalks for students to reach the bus stop on their bikes, on foot.
Someone else within the county staff may have a different opinion.
Are you getting the
Comf-
feeling I'm not going to support it?
Huh?
Are you getting the feeling I'm not going to support it?
The on-street parking?
Yeah,
Not
not
I
without
guess this is the
sidewalks.
first moment I've thought that maybe you wouldn't support it,
Yeah.
but
I mean, you're doing a lot with this site, right? You're preserving the wetlands, you're providing diverse housing choices for Lehigh, all good things. But, we need to recognize people are going to live here, people probably with families, and we have to make sure that your design is going to be sensitive to that. And to hear that if you don't plat the roadway, you're not going to have to provide sidewalks, yet you still want on-street parking. I'm looking at that and I find inconsistency with lead plan policies that require you to have safe pedestrian access to internal amenities and school bus stops.
and what I'm testifying is what's required, or what I believe is required.
Right.
Not to say that a developer wouldn't come in and recognize the same thing that you recognize and do the sidewalks because it's a better project. But to my knowledge, as a multifamily development, if it doesn't have roadways, like platted roadways, you're not necessarily required to have the sidewalk. And again, someone on the staff side may have a different opinion.
And so this recreational area that's supposed to serve well, there is no recreational area to serve the needs of the resident, right? There's one amenity pool.
There's an amenity pool clubhouse area, but there are areas where they could do, parks or something if they wanted to.
Where would that be? Because I look at this
So you-
site plan.
you've got a
and I'm
lot of
looking-
room over-
It's looking like recreation's gonna happen in the street is what it looks like to me.
So there are there's room over here for a park. There's room to be part of this amenity. You can see that this amenity could be moved over and there would be plenty of room for a park. It would be centrally located. It's just, we don't show it on the master concept plan at this point. Not to say that there wouldn't be something. For example, the C5 residences that I referenced. I would encourage you to go by there. It's a good example of what this project is. Summerlin Place off of Summerlin Road, just south of Gladiolus, identical. They both have on-street parking. And it's a townhome type project, which this is a townhome type layout.
The Summerlin Place one's the one that backs up to Lakes Park?
It doesn't back up to Lakes Park. It's, if you're heading south on Summerlin, it's that light that goes to Lakes Park, but they're on the west side of Summerlin.
Okay.
So you just take a little turn there and you'll see it.
All right, I'll check it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything further from the applicant?
Oh, no.
Okay, are we ready for staff then? Staff?
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. Mary Sue Groth, Senior Planner for the Department of Community Development Zoning Section. I've been previously qualified as an expert witness in the Lee County Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan and wish to do so again today.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I do have a copy of my PowerPoint presentation for you. Just in advance, we have submitted a 48-hour letter in response to the applicant's 48-hour letter in regards to the heritage tree condition. And we do have our county environmental staff here today, Mr. William Lang. He would like to be qualified as an expert witness today to address that heritage tree condition that we've been discussing during the presentation. We'll pull him up during the Lee Plan analysis portion. So the request and recommendation, DeLisi Inc. has filed an application to rezone approximately 28.03 acres from Ag 2 to RPD to allow a residential community with 168 multifamily units, an amenity area, and a community preserve. 6 deviations were requested pertaining to circular turnarounds, excavation, ingress, egress, indigenous, open space, and parking. And staff has recommended approval with conditions. Some background on the property. It is located at 18831 State Road 82 between Grant Boulevard and Parkdale Boulevard in the Lehigh Acres Planning Community. The property does consist of one strap and resides within the urban community and wetlands future land use categories as established by Lee County Comprehensive Plan, and it is zoned Ag 2 currently. Some surrounding conditions of the property. It's undeveloped parcel abutting the Bullfrog Canal to the north and the Savannah Lakes MPD to the north and west of the subject property. East of the subject property is a residential development that's conventionally zoned RS1, and State Road 82 abuts the property to the south, and then further south the Golden Palms Motor Coach recreational vehicle plan development. Covering Lee Plan LDC Section 35-145, the following slides will demonstrate how staff has found the case sufficient, and the applicant has met the listed criteria. As stated, the parcel is located in the urban community and the wetlands future land use category. Urban community future land use is defined as areas characterized by a mixture of relatively intense commercial and residential uses. Pursuant to policy 1.1.4, the proposed multifamily use is appropriate given its location, limited size, and the proposed density. The applicant is requesting up to 168 dwelling units, just under 6 units per acre, consistent with the density range of the urban community future land use. The northern portion of the subject property abutting Bullfrog Creek, as you can see in the aerial there, resides in that wetlands future land use. And the applicant has stated that approximately 8.65 acres of wetland area will be preserved and restored, and the development will acquire the proper permits from South Florida Water Management District. For objectives 2.1, the LEED plan, this promotes contiguous and compact growth to contain urban sprawl. The proposed rezone will allow infill development with existing development surrounding and platted lots surrounding the subject property. Objective 2.2 and policy 2.2.1 discuss new growth in future urban areas in proximity to available road networks and where adequate public facilities exist. The subject property is located in a future urban area, and the proposed rezone to allow a residential community is consistent with the density range in the urban community future land use category. Adequate public facilities and roadway networks are available. Applicant has provided the required letter of availability from the FGUA stating potable water and sanitary sewer lines are in operation adjacent to the property, and that they have sufficient capacity to support based on the estimated flow demand provided by the applicant. The proposed development will connect to that central water and sanitary sewer service. The applicant has also submitted a protected species survey and flux for the property, and the MCP was designed to avoid impacts to the existing wetlands on the property. This is where I'll go ahead and introduce Mr. Lang so he can discuss what he witnessed on the site and be submitted as a expert witness.
Hello, Madam Hearing Examiner. My name is William Lang. I'm an environmental planner in the zoning section at the Department of Community Development, and I wish to be
Qualified as an expert witness?
today. Yes, please.
Yes, may I have a copy of your resume?
Yes, you may.
And then will you provide us with a brief summary of your experience in general and specifically your work with the LEED plan and the Land Development Code?
So I was hired in August. I've been reviewing applications, zoning applications, administrative deviations, rezones, conventional applications, and how they pertain to, Chapter 10, open space buffering, and indigenous, and have been providing comment in insufficiency letters, and this is the first time today that one of those has come in front of you. Prior to being with Lee County, I worked for the Department of Environmental Protection. Starting in March of 2021, I worked in the Environmental Resource Permitting Program. I worked both here in the Fort Myers office and the West Palm Beach office as a manager, executing, exemptions, permits, general permits, and the such. I received my undergraduate degree from FGCU in Environmental Sciences, and I received my master's degree from FGCU in Environmental Sciences as well while working for the state.
All right, thank you. Are there any objections to accepting him as an expert in environmental planning?
No.
You may proceed.
Thank you. So staff conducted inspection on the 19th of November and noted trees that would meet the definition of heritage tree, and the protected species survey was silent to that. So staff recommended the condition that was originally in there that, said protecting the heritage trees in order to ensure protection or replacement at time of development work.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, why are we not relying on the land development code provision that basically is a
Yeah.
repeat of the proposed condition?
They just weren't noted there. So the, flux report, the protected species survey, the environmental report didn't note any trees at all. And the oaks that were present on the site that I saw were 60, 70 years old, where the crown closure wasn't even able to open. So they're big, big trees out there.
And are these in the areas proposed for development?
They're in the southwestern area abutting the front, closer to State Road 82, in the areas where the property was originally like a single-family house, and they filled it in the 1940s prior to it being like left alone. And so they've just, grown up really well over the last 60, 70 years.
Right, and the site plan is showing a lake there?
On the southeast side, that was where I accessed the property. Yeah, the master concept plan shows a lake, but the heritage trees are kind of, that's kind of like a little bit more of a lower area. It moves up like more as you get to the center of the property where the access is proposed, and that's where the oaks
Right,
are.
so we know those oaks are gonna come down, and so the land development code would require that they be replaced somewhere on the plan, most likely in the preserve area.
Maybe. I mean, some of them are so large that my thought was that, I've seen development in the area include trees like that, that they could be.
But they would have to redesign the MCP that they're proposing.
That's correct. So, I mean, the condition was just placed in to say, at time of development order, please identify the heritage trees on the master concept plan and say, are you going to be replacing them with a like tree that meets code, or will you be preserving?
Okay, thank you.
So Goal 5, a Lee plan seeks to accommodate the projected population of Lee County in the year 2045 in appropriate locations as guided by the future land use map. The proposed RPD for the construction of a multifamily community provides a greater mix of unit types and adds a range of housing types in the Lehigh Acres planning area. The proposed development meets DCI thresholds. Therefore, the request to rezone to RPD fulfills policy 5.1.1. And pursuant to 5.1.2, the subject property is located in an urbanized area with development on all sides and is not located in an area prone to flooding or storm surge or other hazards. For policy 5.1.3, this directs high-density residential development to be located near employment, shopping, schools, and existing infrastructure. The proposed multifamily is within close proximity to all of those centers, and there is various retail uses along State Road 82 and Homestead Road, which is near the property. Fulfilling goals for policy 5.1.5. The proposed multifamily units do abut those RS1 properties to the east and the Savannah Lakes RPD to the north and west. So they'll be protecting the existing area from encroachment of destructive uses. The applicant has proposed additional setbacks and required buffers, and the development provides adequate park and open space features, including the amenity and water management lakes, while also preserving the wetlands that are on site, fulfilling policy 5.1.6. Applicant did hold the required public information meeting pursuant to LDC section 33-1401, and provided staff with meeting minutes. Meeting was held at the LAAP ZRB on August 22nd, 2023. Fulfilling objective 17.3. Goal 25 for the Lehigh Acres planning community. This ensures that continued development, redevelopment converts the single-use antiquated pre-platted area into a vibrant residential and commercial community. As we previously discussed, This property resides in the urban community future land use category, which encourages that mixture of intense and commercial development. And the proposed RPD is compatible with that goal. It also includes approximately 9.25 acres of preserve area, fulfilling objectives 2510 and policy 2510.1. It protects and enhances the physical integrity and ecological values and natural beauty of the Lehigh Acres community. So the applicant stated that the water management will be designed with a control elevation consistent with the seasonal high water table for the existing wetland preserve. And that is pursuant to policy 60.1.1 and 60.4.1. Which encourages new development to design surface water management system with those BMPs. And policy 60.4.2 encourages incorporating those existing wetland systems, which is what the applicant has done. Irrigation for the proposed development will be from the on-site lakes, and no potable water will be used, as no reuse water is available to the site. Again, the subject property includes approximately 8.65 acres of wetland area, all of which will be preserved and restored consistent with Goal 124. Policy 126.1.4 states that development must provide for maintaining or improving surface water flows, groundwater levels, and lake levels. Again, this site is designed to protect and preserve the existing wetland and incorporate these areas into the surface water management plan. For meeting code and other applicable county regulations, applicant has acknowledged at time of development the LDC and other applicable county regulations will be required. They have requested the following 6 deviations. I'll try not to belabor them too much. The applicant did a good job with those.
Yeah, if you could just focus on the one to request a 25-foot setback from the adjacent residential plotted lots and the on-street parking.
Sure.
I think your time would be best spent on that.
All right. So deviation 2. Deviation 2 that seeks relief from LDC section 10-329D1A2. Is that the one we're talking about? Yes. Which requires that no excavation be allowed within 50 feet of any existing or proposed right-of-way line or easement for a collector or arterial street. They'd like it to allow a minimum setback of 25 feet from State Road 82. Request is to allow for 2 proposed water management lakes be excavated within 25 feet of the State Road 82 right-of-way, constructed with raised curbs to prevent vehicles from leaving the roadway. The edge of the roadway is located approximately 42 feet from the subject property line. The applicant proposes a type D buffer and raised perimeter berm along the right-of-way line to provide additional barriers. And staff has recommended approval of that.
Okay, I'm sorry for not clarifying. I'm concerned about the lake that's adjacent to the residential development.
This right here.
So I think that's the following deviation 3.
Okay. So deviation 3 seeks relief from LDC section 10-329D1A3, which requires that no excavation be allowed within 50 feet of any private property line under separate ownership, to allow a minimum setback of 25 feet along the eastern property line. A proposed raised perimeter berm and type B landscape buffer will be provided where the lake abuts the property line, adjacent to a vacant single-family lot along the eastern property line, providing adequate physical barriers between the lake and the future residential uses.
I'm having difficulty placing a case where we permitted a setback like that without a wall or a fence.
Okay.
Maybe you can help me
Sure.
point me to a case I can review
Okay.
that would give me the comfort in considering this as an approved request.
Okay. I'll have to reconvene with you.
That's fine?
Yep.
That's fine.
Okay. And what was the second one for the on-street parking, which I believe is
That might be the last
5,
one.
6. So Deviation 6 is requesting relief from LDC Section 10-20152C, which requires individual parking spaces to be accessible from a parking aisle intended to provide access to the space, to allow optional on-street parking that will be accessible from the internal roadway network. The proposed multifamily RPD would include individual garages and driveways, and the use requires additional guest parking in these types of developments. And on-street parking has been used on similar projects to provide additional required parking spaces for the residents and amenities. In addition, LDC Section 34-2015-2, staff found this part of it, does not provide for stacking of vehicles one behind the other within a multifamily development other than townhouses, where each dwelling unit has a garage or driveway attached to it. Therefore, staff recommends additional relief to allow the stacking of vehicles one behind the other within the multifamily driveways. Staff recommended approval of that.
So this is not for the stacking, though. This is to allow the parking on the street.
Yeah, the first part of it was to allow parking on the street, and staff recognized that the multifamily part of that did not allow for the stacking within the driveway, so we gave them relief on that as well.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on the appropriateness for that in a project that doesn't provide sidewalks?
I don't believe that the land development code requires us to require them to provide sidewalks on the MCP at time of rezone, but I would have to get back with you on that to confirm that I am accurate in that.
Okay.
For providing sufficient access, the property is located along State Road 82, an arterial roadway in Lehigh Acres with approximately 1/3 mile of frontage. They have proposed the 2 access points, with the eastern access located to align with the median opening on State Road 82, and a second western access for emergency vehicle access, which sufficiently accommodates the proposed development. The applicant's traffic impact statement indicates no roadway segments will be significantly impacted as a result of the proposed development, and is comparing the functional classification of the 168-unit proposed multifamily to the calculated 2029 traffic volumes. It was determined that all analyzed roadways are projected to operate at or above the minimum adopted level of service in 2029, both with and without the proposed development. And as a result, roadway capacity improvements are not anticipated to be required as a result of this request. The applicant indicated turn lanes and other site-related improvements will be further analyzed at the time of DO. And additionally, Lee County DOT did provide transportation-related impact analysis stating that the development would also create no additional impacts. The applicant also provided the required protected species, flex maps, soil maps, rare and unique habitat, and topographic maps, and existing flowways. And the request will not adversely affect any environmentally critical or sensitive areas. County environmental staff also provided a report analyzing the request. They made the following suggestions and findings. The project does meet the large development definition from LDC Section 10-415 and requires the applicant to provide 40% open space. The total open space required would be 11.21 acres, and the applicant is providing 12.05 acres of open space, and an open space summary is reflected on their master concept plan. Indigenous open space, LDC requires for large developments with existing native vegetation that they provide 50% of their required open space through on-site preservation of existing native vegetation communities, again pursuant to LDC Section 10-415B. This property is greater than 10 acres and is considered the large development. As indigenous preserve management plan was provided by the applicant, and the goal of the plan is to ensure that the preserve is maintained exotic-free through a scheduled maintenance program. And the management plan will be done in a two-phase process, the initial mechanical removal and then the sustained maintenance, and in perpetuity with annual inspections. They will occur even after the success has been reached. So also the plantings consist of 291 trees in a minimum of 5-gallon containers at 4 to 6 feet in height on 20-foot centers. And it will also include 808 shrubs in a minimum of 3-gallon containers.
And this will be within the preserve, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Because once they remove the exotics, it'll be sparse.
Yeah, they'll have to fill in, right. It'll also include 1,818 herbaceous ground cover plants in a minimum of 1-gallon containers, 1 to 2 feet in height on 8-foot centers. Staff did recommend open space and indigenous conditions, saying prior to the issuance of development order plans must depict that 12.05 total acres of general open space and the 9.25 acres of indigenous preserve. Property directly abutting the west boundary is zoned AG2, and the properties on the east boundary are zoned RS1. To the north is Bullfrog Canal, and the south property line abuts State Road 82, and they will be providing a Type D buffer as required along right-of-ways. To the north, this is that Bullfrog Canal is a Lampsid area, and there'll be no requirement to provide a buffer to that. And the west abuts an ag-zoned property, so again, no buffer will be required. And to the east, to the RS1 zone lots, they will be a Type B 15-foot buffer. Property is serviced by FGUA, the Lehigh Acres Fire and EMS districts, the Lee County Sheriff's Office, solid waste, public transit, in addition to public schools and parks. And the proposed RPD is consistent with the urban community future land use category and is located along a major roadway corridor among other residential uses. And the proposed use represents an opportunity to diversify housing options in the Lehigh Acres planning community. And it's also in close proximity to existing urban services. The recommended conditions provide sufficient safeguards to the public and relate to the impact the request will have on the surrounding land use. The 6 requested deviations from LDC requirements, staff has recommended approval, some with conditions, but we found that they do meet the deviation criteria. And in conclusion, the requested amendment meets the review criteria established in LDC section 34-145. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of the applicant's request and conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I'm ready for any member of the public that wishes to speak. I have one sheet. Derek Felder, do you wish to speak, sir?
I stole the pointer if you need it.
I don't think I need the pointer.
I'll pull that.
Derek Felder for the record. Schools were mentioned. I'm glad you brought that up. I think you argued the fact that their analysis says that there's going to be 68 students. I forget the exact numbers, but I think Lehigh is 3 times as more, I'm not sure what the word is, but more likely to have children in homes than anywhere else in Lee County. I forget what the exact numbers are, but Lehigh has substantially more children per capita compared to everywhere else. This project to me is very similar to the one that was done by Harns and Marsh, the Eunice townhomes, but I believe that's all plotted. And I don't see a scenario where this should be allowed at all without at least sidewalks on one side of the street. whether there's on-street parking, not on-street parking, sidewalks on one side of the road need to happen regardless. The east side buffer is a 15-foot type B with a berm. I just would curious on if you can detail what the type B buffer is. I can't remember exactly necessary always. I think you had mentioned about a wall potentially. I could be wrong, but there's something in the Lehigh plan I thought that doesn't like walls. They're against the walls, I
was
guess.
thinking a wall or maybe more appropriately a fence, because that 25 feet for water retention so close to what potentially is somebody's backyard, I was raising some kind of barrier for the protection of
Yeah.
future residents, you know.
The right side buffer was my major concern coming here today, was for the
Right.
10 or whatever homes it is on that right side.
But
You know, they're not homes right now, but
residential against residential is inherently compatible. My concern was more centered on that excavation and the fact that it wasn't going to meet setbacks.
that gotcha. By the lakes only there. And then I did want to mention that the date that was mentioned for the Lehigh Acres meeting was wrong, that it wasn't 2023, it was 2024. I did email Dan the agenda from that meeting that did specify the 2024 date. The meeting
So when
minutes.
was the meeting?
August 22nd, 2024.
Okay, I'll double check.
So that was just a typo on the minutes, I believe. But it was for sure this year, not last year.
Did go before them, though?
Yes.
And that's the requirement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I think that's pretty much everything that I had to
All right, thank you.
address.
We appreciate your comments.
The type B buffer, for clarification, it says type B, minimum width in feet is 15, minimum number of trees is 5, minimum number of shrubs is hedge, and they must be planted in double staggered rows and be maintained so as to form a 36-inch high continuous visual screen within 1 year after time of planting, and there's no wall required.
Okay, so how is that different than a type D buffer?
So type D is a minimum of 15 feet, minimum 5 trees. Not different at all, according to this.
Yet it has a different letter.
Yep. There's,
Even the shrubs?
well, there's some other notes. If you're talking like F-type buffers must be 48 inches at installation and be maintained.
Well,
at
we're talking
60.
about B and D.
Right, but this is within that note, so that's what I was reading. I'm trying to figure out why it's different.
Same.
D, oh yeah, D3. For D, for type D buffer, trees within the right-of-way buffer must be appropriately sized in mature form so that conflicts with overhead utilities, lighting, and signs are avoided. Palms are limited to a maximum of 50% of the right-of-way tree requirement. Palms must be clustered and cannot be planted in a soldiering effect where they are equal distance and in a single row. South Florida slash pine and longleaf pine trees are encouraged for use in the right-of-way buffers due to their high crown, which provides tree canopy while maintaining good visibility to the development site.
And those requirements aren't imposed on a type B buffer.
On a type B buffer,
Okay.
that's correct.
So here's what I'm thinking. I mean, if you can provide me examples of projects where there's nothing other than a B with a 25-foot setback from residential on this excavation thing, I would appreciate that. I'll keep the record open for that. In the alternative, I would like to see that either way, but I think in the alternative over a fence, I think if maybe the shrubs that were installed on top of the berm maybe were a little higher so that there's definitely a barrier there. I know it's vacant now, but feasibly it could be developed with a single-family home, right?
Right.
I'm just thinking health, safety, welfare on that.
Okay.
And I think that we can achieve that perhaps without a fence if it's been approved in the past without fences. If maybe we say, okay, the hedge is going to have to be 36 feet at installation. right? Instead of small and then maintained at 36 feet within a year. And then we'll have that definitive established barrier between the excavation and the residential.
May I comment to that? So rather than waiting for examples, we're willing to commit to a fence linear along the portion of the lake adjacent on the east side of the project. So,
Okay.
So we'll just provide a fence for that stretch of.
On that little stretch there? Okay.
For the excavation. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
Yeah. And with regard to the on-street parking, I'm leaning toward a no, but I would say I would approve the deviation provided there's sidewalks.
I was going to comment to that too. We are willing to provide a sidewalk on one side of the street to the degree on-street parking is provided within the project.
Right. And then what about sidewalks to access the internal bus waiting area? You really need to do sidewalks. Yeah.
It would be part of that interconnectivity.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
right.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. You know, because my concern was health, safety, welfare with those two things. Well, I appreciate your willingness to address that so we don't have to leave the record open. I felt well prepared for this hearing. I've already visited the site, so I don't have to go back. If we're not leaving the record open, I should be able to get to this case right away. I don't have any other cases in front of this case. I do have a hearing this afternoon, but this case, if the record's closed, will get my attention next. And I don't anticipate this will take long for me to do. Probably release something the first week of January. And you could probably anticipate a board hearing before the end of that month, or at the very latest, early February. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for a complete staff report and applicant's narrative. The presentations I felt were very informative. Thank you for the PowerPoints, because I do refer to them in the preparation of my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.